News today, the ANC now calling for the South African National Defence Force to be deployed in response to the massive rise in violent crimes across the country. The ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula saying the ANC's National Executive Committee concerned about, in particular, the mass killings in KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape. He was speaking on the outcomes of the party's NEC meeting that finished yesterday.
We have encouraged that the same approach that was employed to deal with the shutdown must be rolled out in the fight against crime in South Africa. If it means soldiers must be deployed, that should happen. If it means that Amaperete must be deployed and strengthened to fight tactical battle on the ground from the police side, in terms of the violent crimes, the police must do that. Soldiers get to be deployed from time to time to support the police in the fight against crime through an operation called Operation Fiela, to get guns and then to be in the township search and seizure in most of the areas. We have said that this must be accelerated.
Our reporter Govan Whittles attending that briefing by the ANC Secretary General, back with us now in our studios. Govan, good afternoon to you. I mean, murder, the rate of murder has gone up astronomically. The rate of detection for murder is under 20%. Violent crimes, crimes against women in particular, up dramatically. Now the ANC wants the army to come in. What are they calling for?
Well, they're calling for the rollout of Operation Fiela. That's the notorious operation which saw the soldiers frog marching people through the streets, making them roll home. It was rolled out at the peak of the lockdown. It's also been used by the government before to hunt down criminals and conduct raids in areas where they believe crime was rampant. At a certain point, they used it to conduct raids on syndicates in the Hillbrow area. It was rolled out alongside Operation Okai Malau from the SAPS, which is really what the police's job is, and they were being assisted by the army to conduct these operations. The difference is this time the ANC wants the army to squarely deal with violent crime, not only mass killings, but to deal with the proliferation of illegal weapons in the country. Now, many reports have cited that most of these weapons have either been stolen from police, some of them, as we saw in detailed reporting by Karen Dolly, that were sold to gangs by people who had worked for the police in Vereniging, where they were supposed to be destroying the guns. So this is a problem which really sits with the police that the ANC says the army should solve at this point. What's interesting to note is the DA has already criticized the manner in which the Ramaphosa administration has been leaning on the army during his first term. They haven't said anything in response to the ANC's latest call, but we do expect severe criticism of the ANC's call here.
Well, I mean, the thing is that I don't know if the army has capacity. I think there are 70,000 members of the South African National Defence Force, if my memory is correct. There are about 200,000 police officers, so it doesn't make a huge difference to the number of people on the streets. And then, as you say, huge criticisms. I mean, at the moment, a police officer doesn't have the power, a member of the SANDF doesn't have the power to make an arrest. Only a police officer can do that. It's in the Police Act. I think there's going to be a huge conversation in our society around this.
There'll also be a huge administrative nightmare here, because what happened during the first stages of the lockdown was the army essentially rounding up people and then holding them, waiting for a warrant officer or a constable to come along with additional police reinforcements to conduct the arrest. And what would happen is that the police would be perpetually moved away from their operations to attend to something that the army needs them to do. Should be pointed out that there's been no indication or request from the South African Police Service for assistance from the SANDF when fighting violent crime. There's also been no commentary in the past after the SANDF had been deployed by the South African Police Service about whether or not they believe that helped them actually complete their operation. So we don't have any sense from Bekele whether he prefers the army helping out to the police. Fani Masemola hasn't commented on that either. This is only coming from the ANC at the moment. And as has happened before, we'd have to see after it's already been rolled out whether it works.
The other story coming out of this is around Joemat-Pettersson. She was the Minister of Energy some time ago. She was involved in a situation where our reserve oil stocks, we keep roughly 3 weeks of oil supplies to keep the country going in case of any shock to the system. They were being sold at a time that the price was very, very low, $30 a barrel. It's a lot higher than that now. This was several years ago. If I remember correctly, the Integrity Commission of the ANC said she had brought the party into disrepute. Now the NEC's made a decision. What's happened now?
The NEC has overturned that decision and says that there is no finding against Joemat-Pettersson from the Zondo Commission nor the Public Protector's reports. Of course, they didn't find that she needs to be prosecuted. They only found that the President should consider instituting disciplinary action against her. What she did was attempted to allow the sale of South Africa's oil reserve barrels, 10 million of them for 5 billion rand at about $28 a barrel. At the time, that was trading at about $38 a barrel. It was also done flouting certain procedures. But that deal, of course, was stopped in its tracks. The oil never left Saldanha. And then when Glencore and some of the other companies which sought to buy this oil went to court to recoup its losses for storing the oil while the deal was in place, there was an out-of-court draft settlement to pay back the money to the people who were going to buy the oil. So there was not any negative finding in court either, although there were remarks made there that her conduct was reckless. She's also been cited by the Zondo Commission as being a Minister of Forestry and Fisheries that degraded the reputation of South Africa's Navy, but also the management of South Africa's fish stocks and how they dealt with the people who conduct commercial fishing. So there have been a number of criticisms leveled against her. There have been no findings that she should be prosecuted. And based on this, the NEC says she's fit for purpose and for deployment. That's the term that the President has been using, fit for purpose. The NEC has cleared her. She's not going back to the Integrity Commission. It's raised questions about whether the Integrity Commission's findings are correct and whether they're actually holding back leaders from deployment. But let's take a look at what Fikile Mbalula had to say about Joemat-Pettersson and her future within the ANC.
The Parliamentary Ethics Committee have cleared Comrade Tina that she did not break any law in terms of the code of ethics that governs and rule and direct members of the executive. That the Zondo Commission itself did not make adverse findings on Comrade Tina. Neither the Public Protector or any High Court in the Republic of South Africa have made adverse findings against Comrade Tina. And as such, there cannot be any decision about her that says she is guilty of something. So the National Executive Committee took a decision to this extent that Comrade Tina is cleared and that she can go on and be deployed in any other position within government and where she is even at the current moment.
Govan, where does this leave the Integrity Commission? Now, up until this point, they've always made recommendations. The NEC's always had the final say. But they made quite a strong recommendation against Joemat-Pettersson, and they basically get to be overruled. I don't know how they would feel now.
Well, that's a new Integrity Commission that will have to swallow this pill. It's led by Reverend Frank Chikane, who's supposed to be the bastion of integrity within the ANC. On that Integrity Commission, the board instructors also veteran Sophie de Bruyn. They haven't responded to this. We're expecting some response to them or from them, but what we do know is that this confirms that even after the last conference of the ANC, the Integrity Commission's findings are still just recommendations, and that the ultimate power in the ANC in deciding guilt or innocence or determining who has enough integrity to lead in the party is still the NEC, which is a contested battleground where factions are continuously at play, and sometimes the results are more insight than they are reflections of integrity.
Govan Whittles, thank you very much indeed. Do appreciate it. All right, well, the other issue, of course, this week coming out of the ANC is how they plan to manage coalitions. Fikile Mbalula also talking about that today. We'll have more on that in a moment on Newzroom.